Zelda II was an enormous hit of the time, riding almost fully on the success of its predecessor and the advertising courtesy of Nintendo Power. Not only that, but the scarcity of the cartridges in 1988 made Zelda 2 and Mario 2 hot commodities which were fought for by middle-aged moms for their children around the country. Zelda 2 has an interesting history, but outside of that, how was Zelda 2? In my opinion, one of the best Zelda games to date, and a fantastic change of pace. Let's get into it. Zelda 2 released at an interesting time where RPGs had blown up locally, in a major way, and Zelda was for the first time not ahead of the curve. There is no denying that a lot of the changes to Zelda 2 were influenced by the success of Super Mario Bros. And Dragon Quest, both released for the NES previous. Zelda takes both of those styles, concentrates on the combat much more so than the original, and just tries to carve a game out of many different ideas. It can sometimes feel like a fragmented mess for some, but for me personally, Zelda 2 is perfect in what it tries to accomplish. Being a huge fan of grinding and old RPGs, giving Zelda a leveling up system that isn't just hearts is really cool and something I wish Zelda would do more. The side-scrolling works well, the towns feel interesting, and the combat is so much more enticing than the original's very, very simple stab and pray methods. One of Zelda 2's best assets is its linearity still somehow feeling very open-ended. Yes, the world is more closed off than the previous game, but the way you feel in these huge new landscapes is really awesome, and transitioning from a top-down game to a side-scrolling action game gives it depth and dynamics. Not to mention, the enemies are much smarter than in the first game, having actual tactics fighting you. You have to be smarter in how you deal with the enemies. If you block high, you leave yourself exposed below. If you attack high, they can block high and then attack you low. It's a game of tactics, and it's far more engrossing mechanically than the original. Graphically, I would say Zelda 2 is just barely better than the original, while the graphics are still not truly defined in the same way, say, Mario 3 was. Zelda 2 is bright when it needs to be, dark when it needs to be, and makes personalities out of complete randoms. Musically could be Zelda 2's weakest fare for me. Sonically, it has all of this slight reverby, echoey effect, and while I actually quite enjoy it, almost every song on this tracklist has that exact same effect. For a Zelda that changes so much, they really played it safe on the soundtrack. Also, am I the only person on planet Earth who doesn't think the temple song is that great? A lot of Zelda 2 for me is kind of uncritiquable. It isn't like I have a huge history with it, I really don't. My first Zelda game was A Link to the Past, but Zelda 2 impresses in so many ways. I will say some minor gripes for me are that some quests, mandatory to beat the game I might add, are too vague. There is no hints given to some of the areas of the game. They look like normal squares on the map with no distinction. But the leveling up system, the battle system, the difficulty of the dungeons, and the risks Zelda 2
was willing to throw at the audience is enough for Zelda 2 to make the top 5 Zeldas for me quite easily. A classic gets a classic sequel.